Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make this lovebird scene. I'm going to be showing you a couple of tips and tricks along the way, as well as walk you through step by step on how to achieve this look. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so to get started, we'll need a few materials at our disposal. So the first material we'll be needing today is a 4x6 stretched canvas. Next, we're going to need a cup of water. And then we're going to be using this plastic spatula for mixing paint. Next, we have our wooden palette to put all of our paints on. And last but not least, just a little paper towel to dry off our brushes. So for brushes, today we're going to be using our 3 1/4 brush for mostly our backgrounds and just getting the bigger parts of the painting. Next, we're going to be using our number 6 brush that's included in the kit. And last but not least, we will be using our number 4 detail brush for today. For today's paints, we're going to be using the colors red, white, and black. So let's get started. We're going to be using our 3 1/4 brush for today. And I'm just going to take the brush and I'm going to dip it in a little bit of water. The reason why I do this is so that the brush can soak up a little bit. I know brushes can get dry. I just want to pat that a little bit and make sure it's damp and workable. And I'm going to go in with the red paint. And I'm just going to go in strokes in one direction, filling the entire canvas with the red paint itself. And I'm just going to go from top to bottom. And you can see like some of those streaks are coming in as well. You just kind of want to go in and start from the top of the canvas and work your way towards the bottom, getting rid of any of those excess strokes that are in there so that it looks like one cohesive painting. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward just a little bit to see the end result of the background of the canvas. So right now I'm just going in and I'm filling in the entire canvas with this red paint, leaving no white space on the front of it, making sure that we're smoothing everything out, everything's balanced as we go, making sure that there's also not too much paint in one spot and too little paint on the other spot of it. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and flip my canvas over to the sides, and I'm just going to go fill in the other stretched parts of the canvas. The reason why I go through this is because I want to have one cohesive color through the entire painting, and I want to make sure that I cover all parts of the canvas as well. Sometimes there's a little bit of white hanging off on the end, and I want to make sure I just cover all of that. Again, we just want to make one cohesive painting, one cohesive color with this entire thing. And so this part becomes a little bit more repetitive, so I'm just going to fast forward to the ends of the paints. Again, just make sure that when you do the strokes of the paint to go back in one long stroke and make sure that you smooth out the entire painting. Okay, for this next part, we're going to be putting white paint on the wooden palette, and we're going to be using our number 6 flat brush. And right now I'm just taking it and I'm just dampening the brush a little bit so we can smooth out the brush itself, and I'm just taking out the remaining part of the water. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use a little bit of white paint in this section, and I'm going to come over to the left side of the canvas itself, and I'm going to move over to the right, trying to make the circle a little bit off-centered, and I'm just going to start the outline of the moon itself. I'm just going to make a circle to the best of my ability, and I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. Sometimes I like to go in and fill in the circle itself just to give it the full picture of where I am in the circle. And I'm just smoothing out the edges a little bit, smoothing out the inside a little bit, just to see where I'm at. Again, I'm just going back in and making sure that some of the circle is aligned and it's being filled in. And I'm just going to fast forward this part a little bit. It's just me going back in, filling in the details of the moon and whatnot. For this next part, I'm just going to be going over the moon again. So I'm going in back with my white paint. I just want the moon to be a little bit more white so it stands out from the entire painting. And I'm just going in once again. I'm just making sure that I have the full white color in there. I want it to glow. I want it to glisten and again stand out from the rest of the painting. So right now I'm just going to fast forward this part a little bit. So in this next part, the next thing I'm going to do is put red and white paint together in one area on the wooden palette. And I'm going to go ahead and use this spatula tool, and I'm going to pick up the palette so you can see this a little bit, mix them together. The reason why I want to do this is because I want to make the color pink. And I want to be making that little outer glow of the moon itself. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix this the best that I can. I'm just trying to mix this very thoroughly and making sure that I have all of the paint mixed together, that nothing is really left over as much. I'm just going to go ahead and place the spatula down. And I'm going to be taking my number 6 brush once again, and I'm going to dip it into the pink color that I just made, and I'm going to make an outline around the moon. The reason why I want to do this is because later on I'm going to be blending out, adding a little bit of white, a little bit of red, just to make sure that I'm blending this out. So I just wanted to start with this to begin with and see where it goes. So in this next part, I'm going to go in with a little bit of the red color that I've already have in the palette. And I'm just going to try and smooth out and blend the red color and the pink that I already made. I put some of the red on the edge so that it kind of blends in with the background. I'm also using circular movements to make sure that I'm blending the paint well together. And I'm trying to get as close to the moon as possible without, touching the moon itself and getting the red all over it. And I'm just trying to make sure that I have everything blended together. And if I need to go back in and use the paper towel to kind of take off some of the paint, that's definitely helpful, just in case you have too much paint and it's getting in the way of blending a little bit. And I also want to make sure that I'm blending in a circular motion and that I'm blending in around the moon itself. As you can see, I'm going in and making sure I have that outline around the moon itself, that I'm having that little glow, and I'm making sure that most of the red around the moon is gone. and it fades kind of into this pinkish white around the edge. So right now I'm just going to fast forward a little bit to have you see the end result of what I just made. So in this next part, I'm going to be placing the black paint on my wooden palette. And I'm going to go ahead and use my number 4 detail brush. And I'm just going to take a little bit of that paint itself. And I'm going to go to the right side of the canvas, and I'm just going to make a little bit of a thicker line. And I'm just going to let the brush move as it wants to go, creating little waves, little curves. Branches don't necessarily have to be straight lines or anything. They basically just have to have a little bit of shape, have a little bit of curve to them so they kind of look natural. And I'm just making sure to go back in, making the lines a little bit thicker because, some branches might be thicker than others. And I just want to smooth everything out. Maybe have the right end of the branch go from thicker to thin. I'm also going to go back in with the black paint, and I'm going to add another branch within that, just a small branch. It's going to come out about in the middle of this one. Again, just creating little curves. I'm going to add another one right beside it to the left, and another one as well, just to make sure I have my tree well rounded and that it has just a few branches. I'm also going to be going in towards the bottom of the right side of the canvas, and I'm just going to make another line going down a little bit, making a slight curve. And then right below that, I'm going to be making a thicker branch. So I'm making a triangle to start with, and then I'm going to be dragging a line from the top of that triangle, and I'm just going to pull my paintbrush over, adding in a little bit of curves here and there when I go. And I'm just going to drag it all the way until the left end of the canvas. And I lost a little bit of paint going through it, so I'm just going to go back in and fill it in as I go. Eventually, I'm making my way back to the triangle that I had, and I'm basically trying to even out and smooth out the rest of the paint with it so that it ends up looking like one whole branch. And also, I'm coming back into sort of the middle and ends of the branch itself. You know, it's thinner in some parts, and I want to make sure that it's a consistent length, or at least it's going consistently from thicker to thin part of the branch. Also, I'm going to be making a smaller branch coming out of that big branch that I just did, and I'm going to push the paint towards the top of that a little bit, and I'm going to smooth it out. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure I get as much of the black paint as I can on my brush. And I'm gonna go in right below that really big branch that I made. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to make a triangle, and I'm going to drag a line right across from the top. And I'm gonna make a little bit of a curve, and I'm just going to make smaller curves that extend throughout the painting itself, making sure that I end right where the left part of the canvas is. And again, I'm just going back in, smoothing everything out, trying to go back to the end of that triangle that I made there and make sure that everything is a consistent thickness, going from thick to thin, and just making sure that everything is good to go for that part. So I'm also going to fast forward again, because for now I'm just adding these smaller branches on. So in this next part, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my black paint. And within the same branch that I just made, I'm going to be dragging out a line from that triangle, intersecting that main branch that I just made, making a little bit of an eye shape hole in between the main branch and the new branch that I just made. And I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I have that branch from the right side to the left side of the canvas itself. The reason why I'm making this additional branch is because I'm going to be placing my birds on top of this branch, and they're going to be looking into the moon. And in order for that to happen, I just kind of want them to stand up a little bit higher than some of the other branches that I drew. So again, I'm just going to go back in, making sure that all of the lines are smoothed out and making sure that all of the paint is evenly distributed throughout the branches itself, and then adding in smaller details as necessary. So the next part we're going to complete of our painting is the birds. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our number 4 detail brush, and we're going to be using the same black paint that we used for the branches. Just going to put a little bit of paint on there, and I'm going to come in towards the end of that smaller branch that I made, and I'm going to make a little circle for the head, making sure it's nice and round and all the paint's distributed in between the circle. And right next to it, not too far away, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to be making another circle. And then right below the smaller circles, I'm going to be making one bigger circle for their body. And their body is going to be touching the branch that they are sitting on. So I'm just going ahead, making sure that the body's nice and smooth, and going back and doing the same thing with the other bird. And then I'm going to go in and draw a very small line to create their beaks. And they should be diagonal, kind of almost touching together. And if you want them to touch, you can. And I'm also going to go back down towards the end, and I'm going to be creating their tails, making sure that they're diagonal as well, creating a slight heart silhouette. Again, you can touch the tails together or you don't have to. It really depends on what you would like to draw for your painting. And then I'm going to be making 2 little lines outside of the tail. Last but not least, we're going to be adding the flowers of this painting. So I'm going to go ahead with my number 4 brush, and I'm going to be picking a few spots of my painting to be putting all of these flowers on. I'm mostly just going to be adding them to the branches, but I'm going to take my white paint and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start at the top branch that I made, and I'm going to be making circles. So there's total going to be 5 circles. And I'm just going to go in and make them kind of next to each other in a circle. Basically, you can place these flowers wherever you want. They can be on the branch itself. They can be on the sides of the branch. It's totally up to you. This is kind of where you can use your creative mind. Put as many or as little flowers as you want on the painting itself. I'm just picking and choosing where I want my flowers and putting those little dots to make them look simple, but yet this adds a cute little feature to the love scene itself. And I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward this part a little bit so that you can see the final outcome of all of my flowers that I put onto my painting. All right, so in this next part, I'm going to be taking a little bit more white paint and I'm just going to add kind of falling petals. I just want to make the scene a little bit more dramatic. And I'm adding just small dots where I think the petals would fall down when the wind blows, just to add a little bit of movement to the scene itself. Again, I'm just picking and choosing areas where I think it's going to happen. You can do this, you don't have to, but I just want to touch up my scene a little bit. And this is the final lovebird scene. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you got some tips and tricks out of this as well, and I hope that you enjoyed making this painting as much as I did.